They call it the graveyard. 2nd Platoon does, anyway. A fitting name for a place where every attempt to breach the hellhole that was the enemy's stronghold only led to more of us lying dead in the dirt. We never quite managed to force those bastards, either the insurgents or the Taliban, out of there. We'd fight for what felt like days, getting just a sliver of peace before the enemy would regroup, harder than ever, launching suicide bombings, mortar attacks, and ambushes on our outposts. Always coming at us harder. Always punishing us for every inch we tried to take. It was here, in this place, that I became the medic I am today. Tired, battle-hardened, and long past the point of believing that the next mission would be any easier than the last. It was here that I watched my friends fall, helpless to do anything but try to patch them up, only to watch the life fade from their eyes. And it was here, years later, that the nightmares came for me. Once again, Bravo and Alpha Company were sent to try and take this cursed town, months after the relentless attacks had bled us dry. The locals? They were no friends. They watched us like hawks, passing word to the enemy, marking our every move. And that meant more IEDs, more ambushes, more hell for us. Upper Command had had enough. They were wrapping up our 12-month deployment in this valley, and they wanted this place locked down, secure for the next batch of soldiers coming in. The town used to be a bustling city, a place of a few 100,000 people. Many had fled when we rolled in, but those who remained had little to defend themselves with. The homes, the shops, destroyed. The streets were nothing but broken glass and rubble. But the center? It was untouched, holding out like a stubborn old warlord refusing to die. That was where the enemy dug in, and that was where we were heading. Alpha would hold the northern end. We would move in from the west. The south and east? Wastelands. Open killing fields. ACOs in position. Lifeline. Bring up the rear. Lieutenant Stevens barked as we crept our convoy of armored Humvees onto the outskirts. We slowed to allow the first vehicles to advance before matching their speed. Each one of our 6 battle-worn vehicles was armed to the teeth. .50 caliber machine guns, MK-19 grenade launchers, and enough firepower to blow a small town off the map. But we were still dragging. Not as fast as we needed to be. The western fringes? Dead zone. The kind of place where you could almost feel the history of death seeping into the cracked pavement. For a second, I let my mind wander, imagining people in their homes, carrying on with life like the war wasn't coming for them. But I didn't feel sorry for them anymore. I couldn't. Not in this place. Taking fire. Straight ahead. Don't stop. Watch the rooftops. Came the order over the radio. Immediately, our gunner opened up, shredding the buildings around us. Rocket explosions tore through the air, sending debris spraying like confetti, but we pushed through it. Watch the fucking road, our squad leader screamed, but it was too late. The driver, blinded by smoke and dust, slammed us right into a wrecked building. Tires spun, useless. The sound of grinding metal filled the air. But the gunner didn't stop. Another ammo box was grabbed, and we fired right back at the enemy. "Get us out of here," the squad leader roared, his voice edged with panic. "I'm fucking trying," the driver shot back. I sat there, my heart pounding, trying not to scream at the absurdity of it all. Was this how we were going to go out? Stuck in a pile of rubble? I had survived ambushes, IEDs, rockets, grenades, but this? Really? "Incoming," the gunner shouted just before an RPG slammed into the turret. The sound of it ringing in my ears was deafening. The rocket flew off harmlessly to the side, but the damage was done. The gunner dropped to the floor, clutching his bleeding arm. "Fuck. I'm hit," he screamed. I immediately dropped into action, checking the wound. It wasn't fatal, but damn, it looked painful. The bullet had torn a chunk of flesh from his shoulder. It would heal. Eventually. But for now, I had to keep him in the game. "Get that fucking gun up now," our squad leader barked. The gunner's eyes were wide with panic, but he crawled back up into the turret. After a few minutes of shaky, disoriented fire, he got the gun back on target. "Shit. Let's go," the driver yelled, finally getting traction. We slammed backward into another building before he floored it, driving us forward with reckless abandon. The convoy wasn't slowing down. Hell no, it wasn't. There was no way we were getting left behind. Lifeline. Respond. Our platoon's sergeant shouted over the radio. We're inbound, our squad leader replied. And that's how we ended up at the objective. A walled compound, the perfect staging area for an assault. The others had already set up security, providing cover as we moved in. What the hell happened? Lieutenant Stevens demanded as we unloaded. The driver grinned like he just won a medal. Just another day in paradise, sir, he said with that stupid grin plastered on his face. One injury, but he's good, I explained, keeping it short. The gunner gave a thumbs up. We're getting reports from ACO, Stevens continued, glancing over at the map. Resistance is worse than expected. Looks like our artillery didn't do shit. He pointed to a spot on the map. Bang bang, Devil, you're taking Point Delta. Lifeline, you're going with Killer to support Point Charlie. Link up with ACO's 1st Platoon. Watch your 6. Don't get yourselves killed this close to the finish line. We nodded in silence. The weight of what we were about to do pressed down on me, but we had a job to do. We didn't have the luxury of doubt. The sun was nearing high noon when I checked the time, swiping the visor on my HUD. I took a swig of water, making sure the squad knew to hydrate. How's the shoulder holding up? I asked the gunner, who rotated it slowly. Hurts like hell, Doc, he grunted. You sure you're good? I can't be worried about you when shit's going down. He gave me a thumbs up. Ain't no thing, he muttered, the usual bravado in his voice. We met up with Killer, a squad built for the front lines. They didn't just fight, they tore through enemy positions like a virus through a corrupt system. They were tough, but their latest loss had them on edge. I grieved with them, but their thirst for vengeance was insatiable. On 3. Killer's squad leader barked, counting to 2 before he dashed out, already setting the pace. It always bugged me, just finish the damn count. We followed suit, sticking close but occasionally getting pinned down by enemy fire. Machine gun right there, he shouted. Without hesitation, a killer lobbed a grenade onto a rooftop that had been hiding an enemy machine gun nest behind what had once been pristine shrubbery and statues. A deafening boom followed. The gun nest was gone. So were the statues. Contact ahead. A soldier's voice rang out. We scattered behind whatever cover we could find as a barrage of gunfire sliced through the air. Can't see shit, someone shouted. Get that fucking saw up, our squad leader ordered. Our gunner hit the ground, deploying his bipod, and began sending rounds into the wreckage of a building torn apart by prior bombings. Move out. Cover, shouted our squad leader, and we rushed behind the next building, Killer splitting off to flank the enemy. As we neared the target, it went quiet. That peace didn't last long. Several insurgents burst from the building, guns blazing, forcing us to scramble for cover. I popped up and took one down, and the rest of the squad cleaned up the rest. Killer signaled to advance, and our gunners sprinted to follow. We could hear ACO deep in the fight ahead, their positions echoing through the maze of broken stone. We crossed a street, and I stopped dead in my tracks, last in line. There, lying in the rubble, was a woman, her body cold. A young boy tugged on her sleeve, his wide eyes not understanding that she was gone. Without thinking, I ran to him and scooped him up. Doc, get the fuck back here. My squad leader's voice rang in my ear. Ignoring him, I rushed to the nearest building, kicked open the door, and set the boy down. Stay here. Don't move. I mimed, the urgency in my eyes clear. He just stared at me, bewildered. His hair was matted with dirt, his clothes ragged. Bruises lined his arms and legs. It tore at me, but I couldn't do anything more. Duty called. I turned and left, guilt gnawing at me as I rejoined the squad. Don't ever fucking run off again, my squad leader snapped. Fuck off. He's just a kid. I shot back, the anger spilling out before I could stop it. Who the fuck cares? Someone barked from behind. I don't want to see another fucking dead kid, I retorted. My voice was firm. Let's move, our squad leader barked, and we pressed forward. But my thoughts stayed with the boy, even as the battle raged around us. Then, the sky fell. An RPG exploded against a nearby building, sending debris flying. We dove for cover, scrambling to avoid the downpour of rubble. "Get him," someone yelled. Gunfire erupted in response. "Enemy down," the shout came. "Everyone good?" I called out. "Medic," came a frantic scream. I rushed toward the blast zone. 2 soldiers lay in the rubble, one trapped waist, the other frantic, trying to dig him out. "Someone cover that corner," our squad leader barked. "I can't feel my legs." "Fuck," the trapped soldier screamed. I didn't hesitate. I pulled large chunks of stone away, revealing his leg, crushed beneath the debris. Blood pooled around the injury. I moved fast. My hands worked without thought, pulling out a tourniquet and tightening it above the wound. "You're okay, you're good. Look at me," I said, trying to calm him, but his face was pure panic. His leg was mangled, but the bleeding wasn't arterial. "You'll be fine," I reassured him, wrapping the tourniquet tighter. There wasn't time for anything more, so I shoved it back into my bag. This wasn't the place for hesitation. He nodded, the fear slowly dissipating from his face. "Shit, man down," the squad leader barked into the radio. "Get him up. Lifeline, we're bringing him back. Killer, you've got this. Good luck." The urgency in his voice made it clear that time was of the essence. I helped the injured soldier to his feet, supporting him as we made our way back through the chaos. The firefight near the objective was escalating, but we only encountered sporadic gunfire on our retreat. I managed to help the injured man into a chair when we reached the compound. We filled the lieutenant in on the situation.
"Shit.
"All right, good work, guys," he said, nodding his approval. I sank against the wall, exhaustion hitting me like a freight train. "Lifeline.
Form up."
"We're back in the shit," the SL called out, snapping me out of my daze. I groaned, but pushed myself to my feet. "All right, no more fuck-ups. Let's go," he barked. We grumbled but nodded in agreement, heading back into the fray. We advanced cautiously, crouching, ducking behind whatever cover we could find, and sprinting low to the ground with weapons at the ready. Killer was stationed in a building with a clear line of sight on the objective, coordinating with another ACO squad. Together, they rained down hellfire on the enemy's stronghold. Ban Bang and Devil had teamed up with 2 other ACO squads, pushing towards the objective with determination. Meanwhile, 1st and 3rd platoons were steadily gaining ground around us. I took a moment behind the crumbling wall of a hollowed-out building with my squad, occasionally peeking out to return fire. By the end of the day, I'd scored 3 confirmed kills, my personal best. And yet, I didn't feel a damn thing. I sometimes wondered if that made me a bad person, but in that moment, it was either them or us. Survival was all that mattered. "Medic!" came the shout, pulling me from my thoughts. I sprinted over to Killer's position. A sniper's round had torn through their machine gunner's arm, leaving it hanging by a thread. I cursed as I approached the soldier, the blood flowing freely. There wasn't much I could do. He was beyond help. "Fuck," I muttered under my breath. "He's out," I shouted, the finality of the situation hitting hard. Killer's SL swore loudly, frustration clear in his voice. There was no way that soldier was getting back in the fight. "Medic!" came another call. I cursed again, but there was no time to waste. I dashed behind a crumbling wall, where a soldier was clutching his thigh. A round had torn through the muscle, but thankfully avoided the artery. I quickly performed standard procedure to stabilize him, then helped him back to his squad. That's when I heard it. Tick-tick-tink. Time seemed to slow as the grenade bounced across the ground. My heart skipped a beat. Without thinking, I shoved the injured soldier behind cover and threw myself at the grenade. My fingers barely managed to get a grip on it before it hit the ground. I hurled it away, anywhere just away from me. The blast came a split second later, the shockwave rocking my body. I hit the ground hard, dazed. When I finally came to, a soldier was shaking me.
Doc.
"Come on." His voice was muffled, distant, like I was underwater. My head was pounding, my vision spinning. I could feel the sting of debris where my uniform had been shredded, but somehow, I had missed the shrapnel. My body felt like it was on fire, but I was still alive. A sharp slap across my face broke through the fog in my brain. "I'm good," I shouted, pushing myself up. "I'm fucking good." I quickly rejoined the squad, disoriented but still in the game. "Doc, ACO needs a medic. Their guy's pinned down. You're up. Lifeline fallen," the SL barked. My mind snapped back into focus. We weren't out of the woods yet. I gathered my resolve, steeling myself for whatever came next. We were heading into hell to save ACO. No time to waste. We reached the remnants of 3rd Platoon. Half of them were too pinned down, the other half needed a medic. The air was thick with the sound of bullets splintering the walls around us, but my focus was on the 2 soldiers sprawled out before me. The first one had taken a bullet to the back. Someone had slapped a quick dressing on it, but the blood kept flowing. I reworked the dressing, trying to stabilize him, and shook his shoulder. "Stay with US, buddy." When he finally blinked, I moved on to the next. This guy had half a leg missing, a grenade's work. There was a makeshift tourniquet already, but I needed to clean it up, pack the wound, do what I could. He didn't stir. I slapped his face hard. "Wake up, motherfucker." His eyes shot open, and he screamed in pain. I slammed a morphine shot into his arm, muttering, "Never mind, go back to sleep." "They're good," I shouted to his squad, though good was a stretch. They weren't dead, at least. The firefight continued, but the enemy began to retreat. They thought they could run, but we cut them down at every exit. We showed no mercy after what they'd done to our guys. We secured the compound, knowing it wouldn't last. They'd be back, of course. They always came back. But for now, it felt damn good to take it from them.
"Doc."
Over here, my LT called as we circled up for an after-action report. He put an arm around me, grinning. "Guys, listen up. This motherfucker right here came to us green as grass, and now he's walking out of here a goddamn hero," he said, gesturing to me like I was some kind of icon. The guys cheered. It felt good, but awkward. "Doc," the LT continued, "I'll admit it. None of us wanted you here at first. We thought you were gonna get us killed. You're still the youngest, but I'll be damned if you didn't save our asses time and time again. You've more than earned your place with us, right, boys?" They all cheered again. I looked down at the mess I'd become. My face was covered in blood, dirt, and grime, a mix of sweat, gunpowder, and regret. My head was pounding from the stress, my body near done. LT squeezed my shoulder tighter. "Doc, you've earned every goddamn medal you'll get. You've earned our trust, respect, and our friendship for life." The squad started slapping my helmet, my chest, my arms, each one offering some silent thanks. They all fell quiet, waiting for a speech from me. I shifted uncomfortably. "I want to fucking go home," I said. They laughed, agreeing more than they probably should have. We formed a bond, forged in blood, sweat, and tears, each of us carrying the weight of the other's nightmares. But not all of us made it back. When we finally returned to our bunks the next morning, I reached for my vest. I pulled out the pictures of the brothers we'd lost along the way. I placed them carefully beside my bunk, like some kind of offering. I swear I'll never forget these men, brave, strong, unbreakable. They paid the price for this damned war. I apologized to them, like I always did, as I closed my eyes to sleep. I couldn't save them. I left that place with a Bronze Star, V device, a Purple Heart, and an Army Commendation Medal. I wish I'd never earned them. They came at a price, one that no medal could ever cover. The cost was too high. The cost was the lives of many good men. I'm not a hero. I'm just Doc of Lifeline Squad, Bravo Company. The next few weeks were a blur, a combination of exhaustion, anger, and that unshakable sense of guilt that always seemed to settle in the pit of my stomach. We'd lost good men, and there was no amount of medals or recognition that could replace them. The battlefield had a way of taking what it wanted, leaving nothing but memories and the weight of survival on your shoulders. Back at base, we tried to pick up the pieces. You'd think after all that, everything would return to normal, but it didn't. Not for me. Not for any of us. The chatter in the barracks was louder now, more desperate, as everyone tried to bury the images in their heads, but we all knew the truth. It wasn't over. Not for any of us. I spent a lot of time alone, sitting in my bunk and staring at the pictures of the fallen. Sometimes, I'd trace the edges of their faces, as if somehow, by doing so, I could keep them with me forever. But even then, it wasn't enough. I'd close my eyes, and it was as if I could still hear the screams of my brothers, the shots, the explosions, everything crashing down around us. One night, after a particularly long shift at the aid station, I found myself in the mess hall, surrounded by the sounds of laughter, clinking silverware, and the usual bullshit. I grabbed a tray, slapped some food on it, and found a quiet corner. I hadn't been eating much, and the food didn't taste like anything, but it was routine. Routine was the only thing that felt like it could keep me grounded anymore. "Hey, Doc," a voice called out. I looked up to see Sarge standing at the edge of my table, a tray of his own in hand. His face was worn, dark circles under his eyes, but there was that old smirk on his lips. "You could?" he asked, sitting down across from me. I nodded.
Yeah.
"Just tired."
He didn't buy it.
He never did. "Look, I get it. You're carrying a lot of weight. We all are. But you can't keep shutting yourself off. We've lost a lot of good men, but we can't lose you too." I stared at him, the words sticking in my throat. I wasn't sure how to explain the way I was feeling. The guilt. The emptiness. I didn't know how to tell him that every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faces of the soldiers who didn't make it. I saw them and heard their screams, felt their blood on my hands. There was no way to explain how much it hurt to survive, to know that while I was still breathing, they were gone. "I'm fine, Sarge," I finally said, pushing the food around on my plate. Sarge leaned back, eyeing me for a long moment before he gave a small shake of his head. "You're not fine, Document. You're just burying it, and sooner or later, it's gonna come back to bite you. Trust me." I wanted to tell him that I didn't need a lecture, that I just needed to be left alone, but I didn't. Instead, I forced a smile, though it felt more like a grimace. "I'm good. Really." Sarge didn't argue anymore. He gave me a long look before finally standing up and heading back toward his seat with the rest of the squad. But I knew he was right. I wasn't fine. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I ever would be. The days dragged on. The firefights were fewer now, and we were mostly just waiting for the inevitable. Waiting for the next wave of insurgents, the next mission, the next battle. There was always something to do, something that kept us on edge, but the calm before the storm was the worst part. It was when the thoughts came flooding back, when I found myself staring off into the distance, lost in the memories. One afternoon, the LT called us into a briefing. The room was tense, everyone sitting up straight, eyes forward. There was a quiet hum in the air, the sense of something big on the horizon. The LT looked more serious than usual as he scanned the room. "We've been getting intel," he started, his voice low. "There's a target we need to hit. High value, high risk, and we're the ones getting the call. I need every one of you to be ready for this." The room went quiet. You could feel the tension settle like a blanket over everyone. The mission was a go. The night before we were set to move out, I found myself standing in front of the squad's makeshift memorial, an old wall where the photos of the fallen were pinned up. There were new faces added to the collage since we'd been out here, and I couldn't stop myself from staring at them. Some of these guys I barely knew, but it didn't matter. They were part of the same fucked up family now. I pulled out the picture of Ahmad, the translator, the one who had been with us in the ambush, the one who had died in the most senseless way, taken out by an IED just days after we'd formed a bond with him. He had the same look on his face as the others, like he was still here with us. I whispered a silent prayer, my fingers lingering on his photo. "I'll bring you justice, brother," I muttered. Just as I was about to turn away, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Sarge, his usual smirk gone, replaced by something darker, more worn. "You doing all right, Doc?" he asked quietly, standing beside me. "Trying to," I said, stuffing the photo back in my vest. "It never gets easier." "No, it doesn't," he agreed. "But we keep moving forward, right? We don't quit. We don't stop. For them." I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "For them." Sarge patted me on the back before heading back to his bunk. I stood there a moment longer, staring at the pictures, the weight of it all threatening to pull me under. But I knew I couldn't stay there forever. We had a mission to do. The next day, we moved out. The convoy was tight, the air thick with the smell of dust and diesel. We were heading into territory we knew was dangerous, a region crawling with insurgents. There was no room for mistakes. When we hit the target, it was everything we expected and more. Gunfire erupted as soon as we hit the compound. We fought our way in, clearing building after building, pushing forward through the hail of bullets. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins, the weight of my rifle in my hands, the adrenaline mixing with a familiar dread that came with every firefight. I don't remember much of what happened next. There was too much noise, too much chaos. I remember taking a grenade blast to the chest, the shock of it knocking the air out of me. I remember crawling across the floor, blood dripping from my leg, the taste of copper in my mouth as I moved from one soldier to the next, applying pressure, packing wounds, doing whatever I could to keep them alive. In the end, we took the compound. The mission was a success, but the cost was high. Again, by the time we made it back to base, I was covered in blood, covered in the remnants of the battlefield. And once again, I found myself at the wall of fallen heroes, staring at the pictures. I wasn't sure if I'd ever stop feeling like I was responsible for every life lost. But I would carry their names with me, always. Because in the end, that's what we do. We fight. We survive. And we remember. The mission was over. But the war never truly ended. Not for any of us. Not for me. The mission was over, but the scars weren't. They were etched into every one of us. Invisible, but always there. We couldn't escape it. Not even when we tried to drown it out with booze, laughter, or meaningless distractions. It was in the way we carried ourselves, the way our eyes lingered just a little too long on nothing, the way our voices dropped into silence when we spoke about the ones we lost. The war had a way of sticking to you, like the blood and dirt that caked on our uniforms. Back at base, things were quieter than usual. The dust had settled, literally and figuratively, and there was an odd sense of anticipation in the air. We had done our job, taken the compound, cleared the area, wiped out the insurgents who had been terrorizing the region, but the feeling that we'd been here before gnawed at us. We knew the drill. Clean up, regroup, rearm, and wait. Wait for the next mission. Wait for the next hit. There was always a next. That night, we gathered in the mess hall. The noise was the same, loud, full of soldiers trying to keep things normal, but it was different. I could feel the tension creeping through the room like a thick fog, making it hard to breathe. Everyone was too aware of the fragility of life in this place. A week ago, we had been just like these guys, laughing, making jokes, keeping the fear at bay with camaraderie. Now, we were veterans of something much worse, and I don't think any of us could say we were all right. I picked at my food, barely tasting it, the grease sticking to the plastic tray. Sarge slid into the seat next to me, his face grim. "You good, Doc?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. I didn't look up, just nodded. "Yeah, just tired." Sarge didn't respond right away. I could feel him studying me, but I didn't meet his eyes. I couldn't. If I did, I'd see too much. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but clear. "You're more than tired, Document. I can see it. You've been quiet as hell since we got back. We've all been through hell. But you..." "I'm fine, Sarge." I cut him off, a little sharper than I intended. "Just processing. It's what we do." Sarge raised an eyebrow but didn't push it. He knew how I was. I wasn't the talker of the group. I wasn't the one to share the weight. I carried it. I carried it all for them. And they carried it for me. But that didn't make it easier. The days blurred into each other as we waited. The usual rotations, the maintenance of our gear, the quiet moments in the barracks where the silence spoke louder than anything else. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see their faces. The soldiers who didn't make it, and the faces of the ones who did, the ones I couldn't save, even though I tried. Every single one of them weighed on me. I couldn't stop it. One morning, we were called in for a briefing. The LT was already there, pacing, his eyes sharp but his hands clenched at his sides like he was holding something back. "Listen up, guys," he said, looking at us one by one. "We've got new orders. It's a big one. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. It's gonna be ugly. The room fell silent, the buzz of conversation from a moment ago vanishing like the calm before a storm. We've received intel. High-ranking insurgent leader. The target's in a heavily fortified compound on the outskirts of a village. It's going to be a tough assault, but we have to do it. The brass wants him taken out, and that's exactly what we're going to do. I could see the looks exchanged around the room, the mix of determination and unease. We knew the risks, but we also knew we were the ones they called when things got too messy for the other guys. We didn't back down. The convoy was loaded, and the tension in the air was palpable. It was just like every other mission before it. Preparation, checking gear, making sure weapons were loaded, and ensuring that everyone was mentally prepared for whatever hell we were about to walk into. But this time, there was something different. It wasn't just the mission. It was the fact that we all knew this could be the last time any of us made it back. The enemy compound was well defended, heavily fortified with sandbag walls, razor wire, and guard towers. We had our orders, and we followed them without question. It was a well-coordinated assault. Fire teams spread out, cover fire, and then push in. The shots rang out almost immediately as we made our way toward the compound, and I found myself slipping back into that familiar rhythm. This was what I knew. This was where I lived now. The chaos was indescribable. Bullets whipped by, the crack of rifle shots filled the air, and explosions erupted in the distance. I moved through the dirt and rubble, my helmet low, eyes darting around, taking in every detail, assessing threats, watching my back. We breached the compound within an hour, but the enemy wasn't going down without a fight. Every room we cleared felt like it was the last, like this could be the place where everything ended. But we kept pushing, kept moving forward, and every second felt like an eternity. I couldn't think too much about what was happening around me, couldn't focus on the blood, the bodies, the screams. All I could do was what I was trained to do, save the ones I could. When I found myself in the thick of it, the medic side of me kicked in, and all I could think about was getting to the wounded and stabilizing them before it was too late. But this was no ordinary fight. The heat, the noise, the overwhelming pressure, it was too much for some of the guys. And when I got to the first man down, I knew it was bad. I tried to stop the bleeding, tried to calm him down, but it wasn't enough. The blood kept coming, soaking into the sand beneath him. I slapped a tourniquet on, desperate, but the light in his eyes was fading fast. "Stay with me, man. Stay with me. You're gonna be okay," I said, my voice thick with fear, my own hands trembling. He didn't respond, and as I tried to save him, I couldn't stop the crushing weight that built in my chest. This was my job. This was what I signed up for. But it was never supposed to be like this. It wasn't supposed to hurt this much. I pressed harder, trying to stop the bleeding, but the damage had already been done. He was gone. By the time we finished the operation, we had taken the compound. The insurgent leader was dead, and we had successfully completed the mission. But the victory felt hollow. Another mission, another set of lives lost. Another set of faces to add to the list. Back at base, I stood at the wall again, my fingers grazing over the photos. But this time, something was different. It wasn't just the faces of the men we had lost. It was the face of the man I had just failed to save. The weight of it hit me harder than ever. And this time, I couldn't shake it. I wasn't the hero. I wasn't the one who won the battle. I wasn't the one who came out unscathed. I was just document. And for some reason, that didn't feel like enough anymore.